Young, I'd like to first of all just give you a background about where the book came from. So as Rich has just said, the book was born from a special interest group of academics and practitioners interested in leisure activities and their health benefits. A special issue was developed with Nicole and Janette and myself in 2019 called Leisure Meets Health, Important Intersections and Alternative Discourses. And then at the Queenstown conference of ANZLS in New Zealand, the book idea was born. And in May 2020, during the pandemic, CABI accepted our book proposal and agreed to be our publishers. So now I'd like to give you the book overview. So exploring the leisure health nexus, pushing global boundaries, exploring the past, current and future intersections, interconnections between leisure and health. So leisure can be viewed essentially as a positive feeling, an activity or a period of time where we take part in activities we enjoy in a place where we're comfortable with those we choose to be with. So good health is commonly associated with physical, social and psychological well-being. So in drawing together authors from various disciplines, backgrounds, expertise and geographic locations, this publication has adopted an intersectional perspective on leisure and health. So authors are located in Australia, Brazil, Canada, Denmark, Iran, New Zealand, United Kingdom and United States. And they include people who identify as male, female and non-binary, First Nations, migrants and people living with a disability. And they're from a range of academic areas such as veterinary science, allied health, tourism and business. So the diversity of perspective is brought to exploring the complex interrelated social, political, environmental and biological intersections between leisure and health. This is the leisure health nexus. So questions of justice, morality and ethics are intertwined with the leisure health intersections. So we explore interconnections between leisure and health, and this takes us beyond the individual and beyond the human-centric approach. So global issues such as climate change and pandemics threaten not only humanity, but all living creatures. So there's a need to consciously seek to understand the impact that leisure activities has on the health of the planet and the impact of the environment on human and other species, leisure and health. So in bringing together a diverse range of authors and topics, our aim was to provide a platform for reinforcing the view of leisure and health as a dynamic interrelationship between individuals and societies, and that one cannot be viewed without the other. So the book chapters consider research and academic thought to reveal and critique the nuanced ways that leisure impacts health, as well as considering how health professionals use leisure as a tool. So I've mentioned my 3 co-editors, but now I would also like to thank the following chapter authors. So Lynn Anderson, Henry Bowen Salter, Nina Burridge, Simon Darcy, Kate Dashper, Christina Davis, Leah Goulasset-Day, Simone Grabowski, Tonya Gray, Sarah Carasoni, Alexia Marubio, Danielle McDonald, Annette Mickelson-Lacour, Emma Milanese, Torben Nielsen, Carmel Nottle, Jenny Onyx, Michelle O'Shea, Victoria Parashek, Sonia Pierce, Melanie Percold, Ariana Reese, Joyce Simard and Zoe Sutton. So I'd now like to ask Richard McGrath, my fellow co-editor, to play the chapter overviews. Thank you.
Here we go. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Hazel Maxwell, and I'd like to talk to you today about chapter 1 of the book, titled A Strengths and Hope Perspective on Leisure, Health and Physical Cultural Practices of Indigenous Women, Stories of Wellbeing from Canada and Australia. And I'd like to introduce my co-authors for this chapter, Victoria Parashak from Canada, Michelle O'Shea from Australia, and Sonia Pearce, who is a Goreng woman and also from Australia. Thank you. Now, just to give you a brief overview, in this chapter, we consider leisure, health in a very holistic way in relation to Indigenous women in two colonised countries, that of Canada and Australia. We posit that Indigenous women use their strength to improve mental, emotional, spiritual and physical health for themselves and for their communities. We look at opportunities for leisure pursuits as an act of decolonisation. We consider partnerships between Indigenous women and non-Indigenous women involving the development of trust and deep listening and the concept of didiri. And we discuss them in relation to reconciliation practices, treaty and truth-telling. We consider 4 cases, 2 from Canada, 2 from Australia. First one is titled Indigenising the White Stream Approach to Sport. The second one looks at physical cultural practices, decolonisation and cultural resurgence. The third one looks at reconciliation action plans and the 2018 Australian holding of the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. And then the fourth one looks at the recent practice of professional leagues in Australia having an Indigenous round. So I hope you enjoy this chapter. And thank you for listening to my introduction. Hello, my name's Hazel Maxwell and I'd like to introduce Chapter 2. So Chapter 2 is titled Disability and the Arts, Inclusive Practices for Health and Wellbeing. And I wrote this in conjunction with my co-authors, Simon Darcy, Simon Grabowski, and Jenny Onyx from the University of Technology, Sydney. Thank you. So what's this about? Well, it's about the lived experience of people with disabilities in relation to the interconnections between participation in arts activity and health. We look at the engagement in arts for people with disability and the link to social and emotional well-being through their experiences of social inclusion. The social model of disability is used with the social, emotional and psychological dimensions of health focused on. So we're looking at the individual and social health impacts of participation in the arts. We do this through 3 case studies where we examine the effects of inclusion in the arts for people with disability and the effects on their health and well-being in the community. The first case study looks at an integrated arts and disability theatre show. The second one is a mixed ability electronic music group. And the third one is a creative arts studios for adults with disability. We particularly focus on the social networks which develop, which enable the social inclusion of this group within their families and their local communities, but also the wider community. And in this diagram that you can see here, we look at the ripple of stakeholder engagement. And so the development of social cohesion through community action and empowerment for the participants, but also within the wider society. I hope you enjoy reading this chapter. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Alexis, and I wrote a chapter entitled Broken Record, the Leisure Health Nexus in Prison. So what broken record am I referring to? It's this idea that leisure is the key solution to health and well-being problems in prison. However, leisure can't actually fix health issues in prison, as these are amplified and even created by the institution itself. For instance, in the case of incarcerated women, social determinants of health are pathways to incarceration. whereas poor health is constitutive of the prison experience, given its institutional logics. For instance, punishment and versus care are pitted against each other in prison and even bleed into each other. For instance, take punitive attitudes among healthcare professionals in prison. Whereas neoliberalism deploys healthism, so individuals are governed at a distance through an emphasis on taking personal responsibility for their health. Lastly, the pains of imprisonment are ensured through deprivations in goods, services, human contact, all of which have an impact on physical and mental health. These same institutional logics are also deployed in leisure and tie back to health. So my conclusion in this chapter is that emphasis on leisure as the penultimate answer to poor health in prison does a disservice to incarcerated individuals who are then held accountable for improving their well-being while state responsibility is deflected. So to learn more and gain a deeper understanding of what I just presented, feel free to ask questions or for sure read the chapter. Thank you.
So this chapter explores an area of health and leisure inequity by taking a look at the experiences and perceptions of migrant women in Australia. Of all population groups across Australia, women who have migrated from non-English speaking backgrounds report the lowest levels of physical activity participation. And this has actually been the case for at least the past 2 decades. So we wanted to gain some insight into this, and as a starting point, really dive into one detail of the bigger picture, and that is, how is the term physical activity actually defined by this group? So when public health initiatives and consultations at the doctor's office are filled with these messages about physical activity and how this can play a really important role in our health, what exactly do those 2 words mean for people? And specifically in this case, what do they mean for migrant women? And how might these definitions help to inform public health initiatives? So through this research, we were able to contribute to a part of literature that is limited but growing. And we gained some interesting insights. As an example, the term physical activity was defined as being something that is beneficial to health. And what was interesting here was that the notion of physical activity being beneficial to health was not just a perceived benefit, but rather something that was tied to the literal definition of the term. Another finding that was interesting was that a really big variety of activities were identified as physical activity. So these were not limited to some of the things that we often see in the public media, like boot camps or going to the gym and so forth. They included everyday activities such as gardening and cleaning. So we are hopeful that this research can contribute to the efforts being directed at improving access to physical activity among migrant women, and that our findings can help to guide public health messages to include activities and priorities that really align with the needs of this group. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Carasoni, and I'd like to provide a short overview of this chapter, which describes leisure, meaning and experiences from the perspectives of older people. I really enjoyed preparing this chapter and the opportunity to discuss leisure from the vantage point of the older person. Leisure time is viewed as an opportunity for life review and for continuing meaningful activity. I discuss how the concept of leisure changes as a person becomes older and as time takes on a different dimension. We introduce the Namaste Care program, a multisensory, person-centered program developed for people living with advanced dementia by my co-author, Joyce Simard. This program speaks to the importance of meaningful activity and enhancing sensory memories for people who are approaching end of life. The chapter concludes with the idea of leisure as an opportunity for reflection and for experiencing transcendence. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi there, I'm Annette Michelson-Lacour, and I have, together with Hazel Maxwell, written a book chapter called When Laughter and Physical Activity Opens the Door to the Kingdom of Freedom, Danish Seniors and the Move Towards Improved Health. The data is from an evaluation of a 4-year intervention in the greater Copenhagen area in Denmark. In the findings, laughter and the experience of playing like children kept appearing. Laughter as a notion is not very well examined in public health, and laughter rarely makes part of interventions and is largely ignored in research. Playful games are a mimetic activity which combines muscular activities and mimetic competition known from sport to produce a specific type of emotional refreshment. The aspect of laughter came into focus in the data. And by combining the importance of laughter and its social bodily processes with physical activity, the study was able to show the social importance of laughter and not just regard, which is normally regarded as just a means to raising the pulse in other studies. Laughter comes out of the shade from the hygienic turn, as Eichberg would have said. Laughter in mimetic activity involving elderly people can be related with insurrectious behavior of the carnival. Elderly people belonging to a health risk group play like children, tumble and fall because of their aging body's limitations.
This short presentation is on behalf of myself and my co-authors Christina Davies and Melanie Pesgood in relation to our chapter entitled The Art of Being Healthy, How Recreational Arts Engagement Impacts Health and Wellbeing. The focus of this chapter is to provide an introduction to links between recreational arts and health based on published evidence. Throughout the chapter, we highlight the growing body of evidence that recognises the important contribution recreational arts engagement can make to the health and well-being of the general population and specific population groups. We begin the chapter by providing a definition of recreational arts that explains how recreational arts is different to art therapy, as well as briefly discussing the various ways that people engage in recreational arts. We then explore the interconnection between recreational arts through a number of lenses. These include the Healthy Arts Framework, theories of socio-epidemiology, and the biopsychosocial model of health. In addition, we draw from the salutogenic perspective in that recreational arts engagement could be seen as a way of supporting health and well-being. Using these frameworks, theories, and models, we discuss health and well-being benefits of engaging in recreational arts. We begin by examining the links between recreational arts and mental health, highlighting the strong evidence that supports the use of recreational arts to increase or maintain mental well-being. We point out population-based studies have found participation in arts activities increases perceptions of happiness, joy, resilience, self-esteem, confidence, self-worth, quality of life, and that 2 or more hours per week of arts engagement is associated with better mental well-being than none or lower levels of recreational arts engagement. We also discuss links between recreational arts and social health, identifying evidence that indicates recreational arts can increase social health awareness, knowledge, attitudes and behaviours, particularly in relation to providing opportunities that bring people together to participate in a shared experience for mutual social benefit. We then highlight studies that have found links between engaging in recreational art and physical health. Engagement in recreational arts has been linked to increased physical activity, reduced stress responses and enhanced immune functions. We also identify there can be some negative physical health outcomes from engaging in recreational arts, such as physical pain or injury or tiredness from lack of sleep. Some arts materials are potentially toxic or poisonous if used incorrectly. We finish the chapter by drawing from a variety of evidence bases and studies to reflect on methods and approaches that could be used to improve recreational arts engagement by members of the general community, as well as strategies arts institutions and governments could adopt to enable recreational arts to be available to all sectors across society. On behalf of my co-authors, I'd like to thank you for your time listening to our overview of our chapter in the forthcoming Leisure Health Nexus book.
Hi, my name is Dr. Henry Bowen. I'm the Senior Research Officer for Military and Emergency Services Health Australia, and I'm very excited to be presenting this chapter that I co-authored with Dr. Nicole from Western Sydney University about the intersections between arts, health, and salutogenesis. This chapter discusses the use of artistic engagement in health across the lifespan and as part of building health, looking at expressive arts, arts therapies, and arts practice. We look at art and health as separate cultures and then propose a definition of health that takes into account the broader perspective of our environments before exploring the connections within the spectrum of arts and health underpinned by a model of salutogenesis. This chapter aims to start discussions about how developing and understanding the intersections and impacts of arts and health might be used to inform legislative, systematic and systemic changes for health systems and healthcare in Australia and New Zealand. We're very excited for you to read our chapter and to start these discussions with us. Thanks.
This short presentation is on behalf of myself and my co-author Emma Milanese, Executive Officer of the not-for-profit charity Sports United, in relation to our chapter entitled Sport for Development and Health, Rethinking the Interconnections. Our chapter explores the interconnections between sport for development programs and organisations with health. In doing so, we seek to not only reveal where sport for development and health have been overtly linked, but also to extend perceptions regarding how sport for development needs to be viewed, understood and researched. To achieve this, we draw from our experiences as founding board members of Sports United, as well as from a systematic overview of sport for development organisations conducted by Svensson and Woods, and their identification of a number of thematic foci of sport for development organisations. To further assist our discussion in the chapter concerning links between sport for development programs and health, we present a number of sport for development programs as examples, in particular programs focused on the thematic areas of education and disability. Within the chapter, we provide a revised version of the Sport Development Organisational Foci table developed by Svensson and Woods, identifying links between various forms of sport for development fields such as education, gender, disability, peace, social cohesion and livelihoods, with various health perspectives such as salutogenesis, the social determinants of health, health promotion and biomedical health. Our position within the chapter is that there is a need for the sport for development sector to acknowledge links between its programs and various health perspectives, both in terms of the promotion and implementation of programs, as well as evaluating programs and researching the impact programs have in and for communities. We argue there is a need to not only acknowledge the links between sport for development programs and broader health perspectives, but to also develop and collate robust longitudinal evidence concerning individual, community and social impacts and outcomes of sport for development programs through these health lenses. We point out that there is a need for the sport for development sector to adopt strategies that have been used within the biomedical field, as well as the elite sports sector for decades, to seek secure, sustainable funding and support models to assist with enabling programs to move beyond short-term fly-in fly-out approaches that can then provide longitudinal impact and outcome evidence. On behalf of myself and my co-author, I'd like to thank you for your time listening to an overview of our chapter in the forthcoming Leisure Health Nexus book.
Hi everyone, my name's Janette Young and I'm a social science researcher, and I'm speaking on behalf of our author team, which is composed of myself, Torben Nielsen, who is a public health veterinarian, Kate Dashper, who is a leisure and tourism researcher, Zoe Sutton, a critical animal theorist, and Carmel Nottle, who researches the lives and leisure experiences of assistance dogs. And our chapter focuses on pets and people and asks the question, whose leisure and whose health? So down the bottom on the left, we have this idealized visual of what we would be hoping people were aiming for, which is a high health outcome for both animals and people, combined with high leisure outcomes for both animal and people at any one point in time. So human health and leisure benefits from pet-animal engagements, but our question is, what about the animal experiences? And so we looked at species and what species needs are in terms of socialization and mental health, mental well-being. And while we might know, for example, that both parrots and dogs are social and people can substitute for their own species, but that's not the case for horses, for example. We actually like horses better than humans. And we also need to be conscious that human defining of animal well-being may actually preclude some animal leisure. So, for example, neutering. And some species health and leisure can be better facilitated than others. So, for example, dogs and dog walking pretty much are presumed to go together, high human health and wellbeing outcomes for both. However, we can't actually presume on individuals. Not all dogs actually like walking, for example. So what might be the ways forward towards this idealized picture? So first of all, we need to be aware of human centricity. We need to share our spaces better. So free-flying birds when we have pet birds, allowing them out of their cages, house rabbits. We need to enable animals to be messy. That's creativity. Allow them to own the spaces that we share as well. And we need to ask really crucially, what's in it for the animals? Into the future, we think that it's particularly important to think about how individual animals can start to drive these explorations. So we can watch animals as humans and let them take the lead. and show us what works for them as high health and high leisure outcomes for them. So thank you, people.
Hello, I'm Dr. Lynn Anderson, a Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus at State University of New York at Cortland. And I'm the chapter author for Chapter 11, Leisure and the Environment, an Ecological Perspective on Well-Being. As stated in the title, this chapter explores the leisure experience and well-being from an ecological perspective. In an ecological systems approach, leisure environments interact with individual and community leisure experiences, which in turn affect well-being. This chapter looks broadly at the impact the environment has on leisure and the impact that leisure has on the environment. And it explores how this interaction influences health and well-being and how leisure professionals can facilitate inclusive leisure spaces that promote flourishing for all people, regardless of ability or health. To begin, I differentiate between the terms health and well-being. We often use the terms interchangeably, though in theory and in practice, the two concepts are substantively different. To confuse health with well-being, in fact, shortchanges the nuanced and complex ways that people live their lives. I present the Flourishing Through Leisure model, an ecological extension of the leisure and well-being model. The Flourishing Through Leisure model is a practice model developed by myself and Dr. Linda Heine, and provides guidance to professionals in facilitating quality leisure experiences that focus on the person in their environments. The model is based on an ecological approach that considers all levels of a person's context, from the person to the micro, meso, exo, and macro systems. In essence, the model provides a tool to amplify the nexus of leisure and health. And last, the chapter provides best practices in inclusive leisure that are embedded in an ecological perspective and can help people experiencing flourishing through leisure. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome. My name is Nicole, and I appreciate you taking your time today to hear about Chapter 12. Chapter 12 we titled Climate Change, Leisure and Health, the Double-Edged Sword of Leisure and the Environment. As authors, we really enjoyed researching and writing this chapter as it allowed to critique the health of our environment in relation to leisure. As individuals who enjoy our work in the leisure and health sphere, Tonya Gray, Arielle Reese, and myself thought it was important to highlight the intersections that occur across the environment through leisure and health. We spend large amounts of our own time in the outdoors practicing what we preach, and we wrote the chapter using a social ecological perspective with a real focus on the social, environmental, and impacts of health and well-being. In this chapter, we discuss how we need to reimagine the ways of doing leisure and pay deep respect to the Indigenous warnings that we need to pay more attention to our environment for the health of our own sake, as it really is a double-edged sword that we are walking on. At the end of this chapter, we offer pro-environmental alternatives or nature-aware behaviours that will result in leisure activities in nature that benefit people and the planetary health. We encourage you, as you read this chapter, to reflect on your own past leisure impacts and how you may improve your future impact for your own health, but the health of everyone. Thank you, and we really hope you enjoy reading this chapter.
Over to me. I've got a little short section which basically indicates that we've been advised by CABI that the e-version of the book should be released within a few weeks. And then following that, a hard copy of the version of the book will be available in early November. We've got a nice little flyer that we're going to send out to everybody, and it tells you more about the book. But at the bottom, there's a discount if you want to get hold of it, those sorts of things. So, yeah, that's my little piece. I'm going to hand it back to Richard to open it up for any questions. And, yeah, that's me done. There you go. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thanks, Richard. And thank you, Hazel, as well, for the opening part. a whole book in 20 minutes. I'm sure there was lots of things people running through people's minds. Now is, as Rich M has pointed out, now's a chance to fire a few questions away. If the authors of the book chapter you're interested in aren't here, then we can pass that on. As I said, this is being recorded, so we can get answers to you as quickly as possible. But yeah, does anyone have any questions for the editors first of all? No.
That's a resounding no.
Well,
I don't have a question.
Oh, there we go.
I just want to say well done on the book, first of all. It's so lovely to hear from all of the authors as well, and I feel like it was a bit information overload, and I did have lots of questions, but I actually should have been writing them down. But anyhow, congratulations. Nice to see so many ANZELS people, and big ups for the ANZELS event. Kia ora, thank you.
Not a question, but we have a comment coming through.
Yeah, we got comments.
That I should have said probably at the start. Again, we are learning. This is the first time we run this. We'll get more polished as we go, I feel. But I probably should have said write your questions in the comment section as we're going along, and I could refer to them. That's what we'll do in the future. For me, I guess the question, as I'm someone who's currently putting a book together at the moment, what was the sort of biggest challenge to the editors of doing this during a pandemic?
I think the pandemic made it easier. Everyone was home. You could catch people. Everyone was on Zoom all the time.
Yeah, I think the case for us was that because we are spread across different locations, we would have been doing Zoom anyway. And I don't think the pandemic actually got in the way so much for us. Not sure, Hazel and Nicole, what do you feel?
No, I think it was fine, and I think thank you for probably the lead author of each chapter was really corralled the teams so that the teams really work well together, but all the authors, and I'm so proud that we had 24 authors and then the 4 editors, so 28 people involved, which was really good. And I was supposed to do a plug to CABI. They've been really good, and I'd like to thank Claire Parfitt and James Bishop. They made it very smooth to work with them. So I think the diversity in the book is perhaps the real achievement, and looking at leisure and health across all those, from the environment to the animals to the arts and disability, Indigenous Australians and Indigenous Canadians, and the global reach. So thank you. I just want to say thank you, and it was fairly smooth.
Trudy's remembered her question, and Trudy's question is, and again I'm guessing this direct to Rich M, what is recreational art and how does it differ from art therapy?
Recreational arts is any art and any engagement with the arts without this idea that it's about health directly. So it's sitting down, reading a book, listening to music, going to a concert. It's just anything. If you think about it, it's the broadness of the arts and our engagement with it, and it's not using it as a tool to improve or to overcome ill health. So that's where we come from in that regard. But read the chapter, there's more in it.
And possibly read our chapter as well.
Oh yeah, read the arts and health chapter too.
It then, they both interlink in terms of that as well. I was just going to say, sorry, Richard.
I was going to say, which is why what we did was we juxtaposed those two within the book, and we wanted to see the interconnections between those two chapters as well. That was what we were trying to do in the book, to see the interconnections between chapters and not think about them in isolation of each other as well.
I was just going to say as well, back to the COVID question, I guess, what was COVID maybe what didn't impact us in general as editors. What it did, like many things, I think in the leisure domain, is you always think about what's next or what's happening in the future. And I guess it was one of those pivotal points in our history that that's what we did think about. And we do discuss that a bit in the book as well. that's, I guess, one of the impacts we had, because you couldn't write the book without thinking about COVID. I think knowing that people would be reading it in the future has a bit of an artifact of what we've done as professionals.
I see a question from Sean in the chat. Sean, welcome. Would you like to ask your question?
I think someone's asked about how long it took us, and it
About that
actually
long.
was it actually was really fast. So we got together and we talked about this at the last ANZL's conference just before COVID hit, which is what, end of 2019.
Yep.
And then we were putting up the proposal start-ish mid 2020.
We started February 2020 and sort of put it in early, and then got approval by middle of that year.
Yeah, and so it's been really quite quick, surprisingly quick, and surprisingly smooth.
Yeah.
That's because we're genius as editors, of course. Sorry.
A lot of that comes down to the work of all the authors, all the lead authors for the chapters. They were brilliant to work with, and whenever we set timelines, they stuck to the timelines, which worked really nicely for us.
I saw Sean's question. Look, I don't know, maybe Sean can't verbalize it, but it's in the chat. He talks about and I think maybe, I mean, I've taken this to mean particularly our chapter, which is chapter 12 about the climate. He asks, do we where is it, cover a concept in the book called, it's escaped me now. It was there.
Solastalgia.
Yes. No, I have to say no, we don't particularly cover that in that chapter, and I'm not sure that anyone else does, but maybe we can talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit after we've had the discussion as to where to next. And I was just going to say briefly, Orchidia there, who's the champion for rec therapy, asked the question in relation to the art and therapy question that Richard was discussing earlier, and I guess just advocates for the need for a little bit more rec therapy in many of our countries, which I don't disagree with. So thank you, Orchidia, for raising that.
Simon's got his hand up.
Yeah, just and being on the peripheral with Hazel taking the lead, and with all her traditional enthusiasm, the rest of us didn't have to do too much for what was a 2.5 year study we were involved with. Given the variety of countries people come from, and also the definitional nature of the various areas we're working in, did the editors consciously provide any degree of direction as to definitional frames? The whole area of, Richard, you used the term recreation instead of leisure arts, which I thought was interesting in itself. So was there much of a rider given to authors around having some sort of theoretical coherency to the chapters?
No, we took a bricklayer approach. That was part of the discussion at the conference over in New Zealand when we sat down and started talking about this, because it's come from the special interest group. We've found people coming from various positions, and we wanted those positions to be reflective in the book as well. So we didn't want to, if you like, constrain the chapters in any way.
Well, yeah, my comment would be that's probably the reason why it all went pretty well, because where you're doing an edited collection with and trying to have a central coherency to definitional frames, etc. That's where a lot of editing and re-editing can occur. So I'd say to Richard, that's something for you to think about with the book you're putting forward as well. So just a comment. So
thank you, Simon.
No worries.
Thanks, Simon. We've got time for one last question. There's a few things coming into the comments in the chat section. Thank you for that.
Oh, one last comment.
Go for it.
I'm starting to recognise Richard less and less every time I see him with more and more hair and beard. I wasn't sure who it was up in the corner there.
Or if it was a mop. We brought the mop out again. Sorry.
This is the legacy of COVID, all right?
I'm just jealous with the amount of hair, mate.
It's not real. Look, I can take it off.
What I liked is the fact you wore the same jumper for the video. So
yeah,
that video was filmed earlier today, maybe.
Yeah, I've got one jumper.
Okay, as I said, we're on a tight things. We know people are busy people. We do have a couple more things to get through, and I'm going to hand over to Janette Young, and she's going to tell us what is next and future ideas.
Okay, so this is from our conclusion, actually, with a tiny bit on the end as well that Nicole's going to cover. So our first point of the conclusion was that it's really important to listen to the voices of lived experience if we want to understand this health and leisure nexus in terms of terminologies and understandings and experiences of discourses, and to think about the power and empowerment sort of factors. So my stuff was about animals. We need to look at animals and observe them and really work on tuning into them and not presume to know. And that's really important with all of the groups that we were actually describing, we were describing, that we collectively as authors were describing, engaging with and talking about this coming together of health and leisure.
And I guess the second point that we were hoping that people would take away from this and think about for the future is the models and frameworks and the diversity that occurs within those. But not only looking in leisure, I mean, most of us are aware of this, but to look in social sciences and even animal sciences, so that we can then start to look at the total ecologies of our communities. And I guess we hopefully have showed that these intersections are occurring, and our role, or we would like to suggest that our role is to actually point these out. So for example, I was at a workshop last week, an international workshop, and everyone kept saying, again, these are health experts, but this isn't measured yet. This is a great space. We need to be measuring this, these strengths and these positive events. And I'm saying, well, actually it has been measured, but you're not looking, you're looking in health, but it's been measured in the leisure sector and that social sciences space. So please maybe take those blinkers off and look a bit broader, because some of this work has been done. We don't need to reinvent everything. So it's those greater interconnections that we need to be looking at.
Yeah. And so our third point in the conclusion is about a call to action. So all of our authors are making a call for those interested in the leisure health nexus to engage in action that can progress leisure health understandings. And that's going to be different for all of us, and it can range from lobbying governments on action to climate change to our own small behaviours in our own backyards and environments. But all of us writing in this book are living in democracies, and we have the power of being part of our democratic systems and processes to be small voices and to ultimately be part of bringing about change and bringing about positive change and important change in others' lives.
And so I guess, and this is where we bring you in. So we've shared the secrets, and we've done that at no cost to you today of how we did this, and that it's soon to be officially out there for everyone to go and purchase, or indeed encourage your libraries to purchase or your friends to buy. Christmas is coming up. It might be a Christmas book list, but as people dedicated, and we are all dedicated to leisure, both in our professional lives and our personal lives. But what we wanted to do is really open up that discussion and maybe look at, this was great, we did this, and this came off the back of the Nexus that Hazel explained, and that community of leisure professionals drive, but is what's next? And we're thinking maybe it might be another book, version 2, And so I guess we wanted to encourage discussion around that, whether it be today or just to get you thinking about, well, then what do you think we should do next? And welcome and open that conversation, because we would be happy to facilitate and prepare that as we move forward. So,
and one of my ideas, I thought, was from people saying that they wanted to get involved in the future, was perhaps case study or teaching case studies could be really useful in this leisure health nexus space that we could use for teaching undergrad or postgrad. So that was one of my thinkings. The other ideas?
Wonderful. Well, I, as you know, I've already put my hand up, certainly for volume 2, and looking through the chat, it's also great to have Arcadia here. So for those wondering, and again, Arcadia is someone that I'm working with here in Auckland on the Sporting Memories project, which Richard McGrath is obviously, and Emma are involved in Adelaide. So such a small world that we operate in. And just thinking about what Hazel said about case studies, the work I'm doing at the moment, we're case studying what we're doing over here in Auckland. I do want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank especially the editors and Rich McGrath, who's sort of came together with an idea when we put a call out for let's organise some ANZL's webinars so people remember who we are, because sadly we haven't been around much. You know, there was no conference last year as we would normally have, but one thing that came from this is, you know, and having Trudy here is fantastic, because obviously Trudy was heavily involved and the co-chair of the conference in Queenstown. So we talk about events and we talk about legacies, and this book is one of the legacies that came from that conference. Another legacy, obviously, from that is where we're going to go next. And you might have seen I've changed my backdrop subtly during the course of this hour to show you the building where the next ANZL's conference will be in December 2023. Behind me is the new engineering building at AUT City Campus. And the top floor of this sort of building here, not the tower block behind it, that's the accommodation that you could be staying in. But this building in front of it is one of the lecture theatres that we would be in. So key thing about getting people together this year and is to be able to plug this conference, because we would love to see you all back again in New Zealand in 2023. It's December. It is the week before the World Leisure Congress is supposed to be in Otago in Dunedin. So hopefully we're going to capture people who are coming to New Zealand for the World Leisure Congress, and they'll stop in at Auckland the week before to visit us up here at AUT. And just again, we talk about climate change, environmental sustainability. This has been planned for the fact that, you know, to justify people traveling all the way over to this part of the world to attach 2 conferences together made logical sense for us as well. So the theme of our conference next year, and it's co-chaired by Heike Schanzel and Professor Mike Brown, and the key theme is leisure for life. So lots of the things we've talked about today, leisure across the lifespan, but also leisure on the planet, and life is obviously a major part on the planet Earth that we're dealing with. So for those who don't know, Mike and Heike are also very big into their outdoors, and it's being co-hosted with the School of Sport and Recreation and the School of Hospitality and Tourism. And it will have a lot of outdoor theme to it, which links us nicely to our next event, our next webinar in December, which is going to focus on the Annals of Leisure Research. And we've got a trilogy of outdoor focused special editions coming out. The first one you may have seen has just come out. There's 2 more in the pipeline coming out soon. So a real focus, we decided to bring the people that are responsible for those trilogy together. Similar sort of thing to today, just a chance to talk and sort of to go over those special editions and the key highlights that's come out of them. It will go on after it will be our AGM. So again, it'll call out for members and stuff to join our AGM. At the moment we're looking at being, I'm just trying to think if we've got the date confirmed for it, but it's going to be around early December, about 12 months before the conference will be coming to Auckland. So, and the call will come out. We've got a newsletter coming out very soon. Simon, question?
Well, question and comment, and it's got to do with edited books and special issues. So there was a period of time when if you did a special issue with Annals of Leisure Research, and I'm pretty sure it was Routledge at the time, would then pump out a hard copy as a, inverted commas, book that Ansell's picked up the royalties for. So maybe, maybe that's another model of getting edited collections together as well, which seem to work pretty seamlessly as well.
I'll just respond to that.
Yeah, Trudy.
Oops. Simon, we look doing it.
Sorry?
Cutting out, Trudes.
Can I just, sorry, my apologies. I've just wanted to note in the chat that we omitted the First Nations acknowledgement. So I'd like to just acknowledge that we missed it and acknowledge the First Nations people that many of us, perhaps most of us, are meeting on First Nations lands, and we respect and honour their connections to this land.
Thank you, Janette. Trudy, did you want to try again? We lost you halfway through.
Oh, sorry. I just was going to say that they've stopped doing books.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, with the exception of Journal of Sustainable Tourism, Judith Mayer and Andrew Smith have had their special issue turned into a book quite recently. I think it's just out now. Yeah, but yeah, they have stopped doing it.
Okay, because it wasn't so much you didn't get a double dipping, you couldn't claim it twice, but at one stage it was a for what it was worth, it was a little bit of an income stream as well, or it was supposed to be. So
yeah,
although I'm sure with Richard at the helm, we'll have money coming out of our ears.
That's Richard Wright, by the way.
We have to specify which Richard we're talking about. We're certainly, the conference will be very helpful for that one.
R1, R2, yeah.
But also, we're also very open to other ideas. As we've said, we've tried this link to a book launch. We're going to have a session related to the journal and hopefully make that sort of more of a regular feature as well, so we can tie in the journal closer to it. But we're also open to any other ideas. Please, don't hesitate to get in touch about events that we can run just to help us grow our presence and remind people that what we do and who we are. Very important to be done. But I think, unless there's any other final comments from people, we might go, and we've even kept it straight to time, which for academics, again, that value of having the videos where we gave them a fixed time and we had to run it so we couldn't get caught up. I think that's one of the best parts of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much to Ansell's for doing this launch. It's appreciated, and just that it wouldn't have happened without. We all met at the conference, a special interest group, and that then developed. So thank you, Ansell's.
I'm just going to end with a karakia as well for the New Zealand part of it, which is Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa punamo te moana, he hurahi te tatu e tengi rangi nei, Arawa atu, araha mai, tatu ai e tatu katoa, hui e, taki e. Which for those is, may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in December.